We are looking into failures. I'm quite excited about this session and the next one. The last two sessions of the day, probably the highlight actually of the day, I would imagine. It's just we shy away so much from failures all the time. I think professors do that, certainly students do that as well. And that raised the question is, how do we deal with failure? We have a lot of failures in sustainability. However, if you look around, everybody seems to be doing so fine. Although we heard from our keynote this morning from Professor Ramsdorff, and we're not doing so fine. So therefore, that's what we're going to do. We're going to break that taboo, and we're going to not shy away, and we'll talk about failure. And there's one leading question, perhaps, is it correct that acknowledging and understanding of failure can drive more creative and effective solutions through sustainability? But we're going to find out. And I'm really thrilled to be joined by two remarkable speakers, and you'll know why when we start talking to them. He is the Chief Impact Leader at Ilva. And Ilva is a Finnish real estate company. Let's welcome Elis Ritkönen to the stage. And joining also is the Head of Impact and Development at the Travel Foundation, Rebecca Armstrong. Please join me both. Rebecca, Elis, come on to the stage. Yeah, so let's pivot quickly to our topic. Before, we'll do a quick icebreaker. Elis, I think it's the first time you come to ITB, is that correct?
That's correct.
Impression so far?
It's massive, a lot of interesting talks and like encounters with hugely amazing people.
Are you getting infected? Right? Because this is what happens. You come once to ITB and that's it. You never leave.
I'm sort of dazzled still, but it's been a couple of days.
Very good. Rebecca, you've been actually on multiple panels, if I understand this right. ITB is nothing new, or?
I'm new to ITB, actually.
New to ITB, but yes, you were busy.
This is my second panel, and I've been really busy and meeting some great friends and partners, but new connections as well, and it's been really brilliant. I'm exhausted, but exhilarated.
Yeah, we all are. So, okay, I've got to set this, set a bit the stage here. A few months ago, something is happening on LinkedIn. One of my colleagues, a professor, sends me a message, says, listen, have you seen this company? He's Finnish himself. He says, have you seen this company, Ilva? They've published an irresponsibility report. And maybe while I talk, we can actually put the PowerPoint up right away about that. This company has published an I said, what do you mean irresponsibility report? Yeah, they've published about the failures that they've made over the years. I said, this is so unusual. Which company actually does that? It was so interesting that I reached out to the company, and Elis and I, since then, we've become best friends because we keep talking about how to deal with failure. And so, Elis, tell us a little bit about, first of all, about Ilva, just a few words. What is that company all about? And also, what prompted you to discuss failures?
Yeah, so we are a rather interesting, weird creature. We are owned by the Student Union of the Helsinki University, so 30,000 students own us and demand us to act. We function in two different branches, so restaurant industry and real estate industry. We run 19 restaurants, and we own roughly 90,000 square meters of space that we manage and let out. And the Student Union basically demands us to act in planetary boundaries, and that's why we are aligned with the 1.5 degree Paris Agreement scenario, and we want to push it even further. So that's why we decided that, okay, everybody is buzzing about the responsibility, sustainability, but once we talked with our partners, everybody said that our notions are right in that we are not doing enough. But nobody just dares to talk about it. So we heard scientists talk about it. We have heard a lot of people buzzing about it here, but usually you don't report it anywhere.
You don't report it anywhere. So what sparked that interest to say, let's report publicly? I think you have 10 big failures.
It was 7 since.
17.
Seven since.
Oh, okay. So tell us a little bit, what prompted this idea to say, we're going to publish? So, and tell us a few examples. Can we have the PowerPoint as well on the screen, and then we'll see, I think. Give us some examples. What prompted this, and give us some examples, and also tell us a little bit what was the reaction from your stakeholders?
Yeah. So the actual prompt was that we identified problems in our sustainability actions, even though we were seen as the forerunner in the two industries. And then we decided that, okay, we need to somehow come out with this, and how about changing the whole thing? What went wrong in our actions? A very simple thing to do, and in terms of the sustainability hype, it's quite a counterattack to that. So maybe we can jump into the next slide
please. Yeah,
to show what we stated. So we stated that we won't be able to achieve the carbon neutrality promise, for instance, that we had beforehand, explained what we're going to do about it, things about carbon calculations.
You've mentioned in the carbon calculation that you also looked at your supply chain. You say, well, they also tell us that they're going to do their work, but we're not too sure whether they are doing the work that they said they were, right?
That's right.
So it's also transparency with your suppliers.
Yeah, that's correct. And as the partners were stating, yeah, you're right, but nobody just dares to talk about it. Then we thought, okay, maybe we are the ones that can, roasting ourselves, and then maybe other companies can as well self-reflect on.
Was also the idea of publishing this to think we may not have quite this, so we have made mistakes here, and you talk about a new project as well, I think a new building with lots of embodied carbon, etc. And so was the idea to also publish it, to publish this report, to hear from others that are maybe have the solution to come to you and say, listen, Ylva, why don't you actually try this? Was that also in the back of your mind to say, we're doing pretty good, but we can do better? Can others help us?
That's also part of the equation, of course, that it arises interest and people are looking at those points and then coming, hey, we could solve this to
So
you.
was that the reaction of some of the stakeholders? Did they get back to you on this?
Yeah, there are some that have contacted us because of that.
Good. This is great, and I know you'll have a lot of people to talk to you at the break. Rebecca, turning to you and listening to just Ellis right now, considering the work that you do, and you do a lot of work with different stakeholders across the world in your position, do you have the feeling that we have in this industry a healthy relationship with having failures?
I don't think we do. I think there's a fear about, as Ellis has referenced, really, about sort of acknowledging that and acknowledging the wider system that we operate in as well. I think one of the takeaways I took from the report was that wider system. So even though we can make progress individually as companies, our system is stuck, and I think that's very true of tourism as well, that we have these systemic challenges. So we have and do make progress as individuals and as companies and as destinations, but where are those wider systemic challenges, and how is our system set up? Do we need a new model?
Oh, so is that the reason why we failed to create the necessary changes to date? Is it because of a systemic problem and not so much an individual, or is it sort of the addition of all the individual problems? How is it that we're not making the progress we're supposed to do?
I think it's both. I think there is a lot of ambition at the individual level, and there has been a lot of progress if we look back over the last sort of 15 or 20 years. But I do think the system is predicated on a model that rewards growth, rewards treats success on kind of numbers of visitors and GDP, rather than really looking at actually those planetary boundaries that Ellis referenced earlier. Are we operating within those planetary boundaries, or are we just growing?
Got it.
Growing.
Okay, so it's the understanding of what tourism success means at the end of the day. Tourism success means, Ellis, back to you on this. So now you are under pressure a little bit, I would imagine, from your students that are because you're a student union company, of growth, isn't it? I mean, don't you have that pressure as well? Of that, what we just talked about, that growth, and then dealing with planetary boundaries? Is that one of the issues that we see in the report as well? I think you do have, sorry to interrupt, I think you do have a statement to say the more we grow, the more we have emission or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. And usually we try to explain it through, okay, our carbon intensity can get lower. But in the end, accumulatively, if we are growing that, the planet doesn't like it. So we need to be honest about it. Accumulatively it changes, so that's why we need to pinpoint that problem as well, because the 1.5 degree scenario as talked about today is a bit, we've already probably gone over it. And the more we can save, it's even more important that we pinpoint that. And for that, we need to jump from the linear system to the circular system. and be honest about it, so we notice and understand the problems we've got.
Yeah, and that's a nice segue that you've done to the keynote this morning about the cumulative story around emissions. Yeah, thanks very much. Last, we're running out of time already. This is the end of the day, it's a rush. Listen, I'd like to ask you to provide the audience and me with advice on another tourism player that may be a little bit hesitant about the step that you've taken to disclose the sustainability failure. What sort of message do you have to those companies? We'll start with you, Rebecca. We'll finish with you, Ellis. Go ahead.
I think we need bravery. I think what Ellis is demonstrating is that bravery to step out and say, actually, we are having these challenges, and we're seeing, Air New Zealand and IHG, I would say, have both demonstrated that kind of bravery. They've said we're not going to meet our targets, and often that is because of that wider system. And so I feel like the more we have a mindset shift to individual successful failure to systemic successful failure, the better chance we have, and that collaborative action of the more people are advocating for what they need for change, the more likely that is to happen, I think, if we can collectively advocate for what we need.
Thank you, Rebecca. Ellis?
Yeah, I guess honesty, self-reflection, and admittance are the first steps to really understand and be able to get to grips with the actual problems. If you don't admit your problems, then you are doing the old way.
Very good. Thank you so much. Let's give a good good applause for our two guests. Please stay around. Ellis and Rebecca, I think this is maybe the key word to embrace our failure, to try to do better. So that's been very, very enlightening for all of us.